Hello and welcome back to the second part of our 5-year retrospective look at the COVID experience and the profound ways in which it's affected all of our lives. I'm chatting with Nicola again. If you haven't seen the first part of this, then the link will be in the description. But this is part two, where we go through the words we didn't have a chance to address last time. So let's dive straight in. Hi, Nicola. How are you doing today?
Hey Jez, I'm doing all right today and glad to be here. How about you?
I am. Let's be kind and call it middling.
All
But I'll,
right.
I'll I'll dig out some spoons just for the next half an hour or so. Um,
Okay.
so the first word we're going to kick off with is one that we've added to the list because it was mentioned in the comments of the last video, and I think it's particularly pertinent and relevant for all of us, and that is loneliness. So
Mhm.
yeah, so Nicola, tell me about how loneliness has fitted into your long COVID journey.
I would say the worst of it was those first 2 years of feeling so ill and with a deeper impact on my ability to participate in life, coupled with lockdowns. And I will just say, too, I was so frightened of reinfection, especially before vaccines, that I was hyper vigilant to not risk exposure. I kept my kids, extra time. We had, periods just making decisions about staying in sort of a lockdown mode. And so I just have profound empathy. And I will say, I think this is really unique. And only those of us who had long COVID in those early waves when it was also coupled with lockdowns, because illness so often we're buoyed if we have the village. And that double whammy of fear of reinfection, fear, of each other, where really so often we're meant to be tended, to be receiving more care. That was so lonely and challenging and truly unique. So I'll say that, the first section. And then now, where I'm much further along, a lot more recovery, although by no means back to the old baseline, no exercise, etc., still, fluctuating symptomatically. I would say it's a quieter, more subtle loneliness in that I'm so grateful for the amount of social connectivity and participation in life that I do have. But it's almost like having an invisible chronic condition. There's a kind of loneliness to feel that like not many are, or you wouldn't even know are on that. And in many ways, I don't want it to be on the front burner. I don't want that to be the thing I lead with or that people collapse my identity with. So I'm not going to be reporting every little symptom, but it's almost like sometimes I think I don't feel as seen or understood, that is still a very impactful part of my reality. So that's complex. How about you?
It is complex, isn't it? I think there's two sort of obvious ways of breaking this down. So there's the physical side of it. You just don't see your friends as much. You don't see your family as much. You don't see the important people in your world and the not so important but funny people who maybe just lift a day, right? Um, I miss I miss my old work colleagues. You know, the film industry is one where you work hard and you play hard, and um, there's a very particular sense of humor in that community and amongst my friends in that community, and I miss that. I miss spending that time with them. I miss so much, right? But that is one part of it. There's that physical loneliness, and then I think there's the emotional loneliness where I mean, some people watching, listening to this will have partners who fully support them and are very empathetic and really get or attempt to get and are curious about that experience, the experience of chronic illness and what it's like to have an energy limiting condition or a very symptomatic condition, depending on the version of long COVID you've got. But I would imagine that probably the majority of people watching, listening to this, if they're in relationships or other family members, don't really get it. And it's a journey that you go on by yourself. And even the people close to you aren't really there, maybe as much as you'd like them to be. And I think that adds a very particular kind of loneliness where maybe those other people in your life don't want to hear about your shit day. And you have to deal with it yourself. And that's hard.
And can I piggyback on that, Jez, and just say, and sorry, sometimes I get throat irritability. So sorry, that's one of my symptoms. And I'm a little bit with that today. But just to echo that, I think it's tricky too, because when it's chronic, or in our case, it's been 5 years, it's different than an acute, even sometimes very serious illness. But that if it is something that is going to have an endpoint, or, even often not a new normal, edit that out, Jess. Sorry, just a minute.
Brain fog,
Unlike an
brain fog is fine. Brain fog stays in.
they've already seen it. They've already seen
No, say it again.
Okay. Okay. No, I was just going to say, I think with chronic illness compared to more acute illnesses that may then have remission or full recovery, it's tiring for us. And I also have empathy. That's not easy. Almost like I can appreciate that partners or people who are our significant others, they also can have compassion fatigue, empathy fatigue. It's not neutral for them if we can't pull the same load we used to. So I also empathize. There's something about the long, unpredictable, chronic aspect of it that adds to some of that fatigue, I think, and a burden on relationships. So that's one. Okay. The other, I have a couple people in my life, to my surprise and hurt, honestly, it feels a bit almost like a betrayal, who I feel like not just don't understand, but do actually question, do some of that gaslighting, presume, is it more anxiety, haven't chosen to learn about the many millions around the planet who are also struggling. And so there's also I've made a choice that I am not going to emotionally lean into those people for support, but in some ways that creates, then it limits the intimacy between us because it is a big part of my life. And I do nurse some of that sense of betrayal and disappointment. So there's again, a nuanced, it's not even all or nothing. I can still have this person in my life, but it's had all kinds of impacts. So I know we're not alone in this.
No, and yeah, it's a bit of a hard hitting one to start our upbeat list with, but I think it's an important one. There was one comment that came in on the previous video, which is connected to this subject and also empathy, and I just want to read it out actually because it was so good. Long COVID brings the human condition into sharper focus. We humans are all limited. We all have finite time and energy. Everything anyone chooses to do represents something else they didn't do in a moment that will never come again. All our capabilities were given to us by chance, not merit, and can be taken away by chance without fault. The only certainty in life is that eventually they all will. I think reflecting on this can make us feel less alone. So that was a comment left by Ruth, and I just thought that was, yeah, a nice way of looking at it.
Yes, and I really appreciate that. There's a lot of wisdom in that. And I think whether it's the medical trauma of having healthcare providers who confront their own not knowing and then project that, judgment or whatever it may be onto us. I guess I just want to say that to offer that strength and empathy to those of us who have encountered that, whether it's a loved one, a medical professional, because I think I can see when I'm more detached, not taking it so personally, I think a lot of people are very uncomfortable with not knowing and then reject that or actually have a psychological response of denial. They don't want to confront the kind of that things will happen out of our control, that we have a lot less agency. So I feel like Ruth is pointing to a wisdom, and not all people have that maturity and comfort with what a lot of us have been navigating for 5 years or, around that time frame.
I think the other thing that's funny about this subject too is that it's not always the people you think will be good supporters who are, right? So you might have, if you were asked before long COVID came along, who do you think in this kind of pickle, who's going to be there for you and who will get it and who won't? Not that turns out to not be the people maybe you think each way around.
Yeah, no. So even like, again, just a sort of empathy for how much this ripples to affect so much. But I'm with you. Yep, not predictable.
Yeah. So let's move on to growth.
Okay.
And in what ways do you think that this experience has helped you grow as a person?
Well, I think it has a lot. And I was thinking about what helped me experience growth. And I thought it might be helpful too to distinguish this whole notion of like post-traumatic stress or post-traumatic stress disorder or post-traumatic growth. And I think it's valuable to name because you can go through a trauma and both of those are options. And I would say I experienced some of both. I don't think it's clean and tidy, but I was thinking about what helped me get out of a deeply, like more of that stress response, contracting, lots of anxiety. We talked about some of the emotional stuff yesterday. What I want to give credit actually is to point at what helped me step into more of a growth response. Now, every improvement, the more my body felt more comforts, it was easier. Let's face it. There's just that aspect. But when I look back, there's a few turning points that I really attribute helped me grow through this experience. And they may sound sort of cliche or simple, and yet I would say they were pretty profound and helpful. And the two that I thought I would name are meditation and also a gratitude practice. And it sounds so almost annoying or Pollyanna or something. And yet the science is in, Jazz. Like, and I just know both of those. I think the meditation probably helped settle the nervous system. And then I could kind of get out of that vicious loop that I was in, the more stress, the more symptoms, you know. So that just really helped everything shift track. I haven't maintained it perfectly, but it made a difference. I could tell a few months of daily meditation, I really attribute. And the gratitude, I just decided I'll just start weaving that into journaling. And it was almost like it forced my brain to stop focusing just on all the shit because there was a lot I could look at and kind of marinate in. And it truly helped my brain nudge onto a track of greater appreciation. And it just helped me get out of a bit of what I would just say for me, like feeling a bit of deeply isolated, kind of victim to these circumstances. And so they may sound simple, but I would say those were really helpful to shift my availability that this could be a growth experience.
I think growth's hard, isn't it? Because you have to hope that you're growing all the time during life anyway. Anything that hits you with this much wallop, it does present itself an opportunity for growth, right? Because we grow and we learn through adversity, and there's nothing like the adversity that 5 years of this shit throws at you, right? Where your very faculties are challenged and called into question in ways that you hadn't thought about before. I mean, if I for me, how would I describe the growth part of it? I think it's helped me identify patterns in my life that weren't long term healthy fundamentally before.
Yeah.
And it's helped me make better choices about what's important. Because suddenly every choice you make has such cost attached to it. Every single thing that you do has a cost, an energy cost, a symptom cost attached to it, and an opportunity cost because of the thing that not that you can't do in the time you're doing the thing, but the other things you can't do in the times you have to rest before and after the thing you chose to do. There's
Mhm.
like, and this is one of the things that other people don't get. It's not like, hey, can you just do this for me? Sure. They're not just asking you to do the thing. They don't realize they're asking you for the time it takes to rest before you do the thing and the time it takes for you to recover after you do the thing. So there's a three times multiplier on that. And it's so when you're facing those sorts of opportunity costs and energy costs and symptom costs, I think you do have to really think hard about what really matters at the end of the day. And I think that I'd already got a couple of signs on this front 2 or 3 years before COVID. And I was kind of ignoring them and continuing in my old patterns of life, basically just jetting around the world, trying to do too much and not really slowing down and taking stock of living the kind of life that would enable me to look back in however many years it is and think I've got no regrets. That was
Yeah.
that's the thing, right? And how can you still have a life in which you don't have regrets in a world where you have long COVID? What is it that you can spend the little energy you've got doing that means you'll look back and think I don't have any regrets? That's a hard one, right?
For sure. And Jez, I would just echo for sure this opened up an opportunity to revisit some old traumas. And I saw other people mentioning that in the chats and the comments. And so I would say for sure, that's an opportunity. You don't have to take it, but if there are ways to engage that, I think for lots of us, that's a growth and a healing opportunity. And I guess that idea, and I just want to credit you, anytime we can have a creative response to life, including the really hard stuff, to me, that's growth. I mean, we're just suffering when we can't find any agency, and maybe this begins to connect us to the meaning. But I just want to say, I see you as having hugely used this as growth. I mean, you've written a book on long COVID, you've done this channel. That's a hugely creative response. And I just want to honor it. That's growth too.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, that leads us, I think, into our next word, which is purpose, with regards to our present purpose or how we find purpose in life now, which is probably going to be different than it was when we talked about it in the context of pre-March 2020. So for you, what would you say your purpose in life is now, and how might that be different than it was 5 years ago?
I was thinking, because I'm curious, I have a feeling this is a cool contrast for us. In some ways, I feel privileged that mine actually does still feel continuous. It is still parenting and coaching and my vocational work. And I'm just so grateful that those are like, I have enough capacity. I can honor both of those. I can show up for those. I was thinking about, someone wrote in the chat like they were a dancer. Some of us had careers, and I know you may speak to this, that were not compatible with the energy levels, the capacity we have. So I had a couple years where things were knocked sideways and upside down, but with my own recovery to an adequate level and the kids back to school and the whole society kind of settling out of pandemic mode, I feel like actually my purpose is still it still remains the same. And I gratefully can do that to the extent that I can.
That's awesome. I'm actually really happy to hear that, because both of these
Yeah,
are good, right? If your purpose, I think where it becomes challenging is if your purpose is still your old purpose, but you're not able to do it. That's
exactly.
where you'll be bashing your head against a brick wall.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you're going to be facing horrific amounts of grief and loss and anger and resentment for the fact that you are basically, you know, you're not able to go in the direction in life that you feel
Yeah.
you should be. And so I mean, I guess it took me. I mean, yes, I guess fairly quickly I jumped into the YouTube work and the patient advocacy work and the research side of things, and so I guess that gave me a purpose. But that
Yeah.
wasn't. I didn't feel that that was going to be the purpose of my next 20 years. It was my purpose to get me through that phase.
Yeah.
Where I think I've come to now in terms of purpose is adjusting from the things that used to really inspire me and get me excited, and finding new ways that I can exercise those sort of muscles, if you like, um, in ways that I still find satisfying, despite the fact that I can't go back to filmmaking. So I did one shoot day for Visible, actually. Great team, great product. Go and have a look at it. It's a wearable that helps you track and manage chronic illness. And we shot a bunch of interviews, which are going to be going up on YouTube fairly soon. But so I did one shoot day for that. And as far as shoot days go, it was as straightforward as they come. It was one studio, some static interviews, basically. And that's as straightforward as a shoot day comes, but it knocked me out for 3 days afterwards. So that's a pretty good indication that I can't be calling up my old clients and saying, hey, send me back to work, because that's not good for
Yeah.
my health. So what can I do instead? Well, on the creative side, I am adapting my old screenplays while I was trying to get made into movies, into novels. I finished the first manuscript. I'm halfway through the second one. Um,
Oh,
and I'm finding that process really rewarding, really rewarding. And I'm hoping that we'll get to publishers and they will see the light of day. I hope so. We'll see. But I am finding that process incredibly rewarding, and I still feel like all of that time that I spent developing those skills and that storytelling side of what I did
yeah.
isn't going to waste. And I am still finding an avenue for expressing myself in that way. And as I say, people will know at the point at which I find a publisher and it's going out, I'll talk about it. But I'm excited about that expression of something I feel passionate about. And then on the other side of it, just recently I had an article published in a very well-respected online automotive magazine. And I've just submitted another one now. And if I can, I mean, my YouTube channel was originally going to be about classic cars and, nonsense and running. Obviously, it turned into this. But if there's a way of me expressing those things that I feel passionate about in a way that's compatible with my energy levels, and writing is, I can generally manage it some of the time, then that would be fantastic. And we'll see what happens. No expectations. But again, my purpose now is to try and find ways of expressing the things I'm expressing myself in the things that I feel passionate about in a way that's still compatible with my current level of health. That's not always possible for everybody. If you're if you're a pilot or if you're a surgeon, you probably can't. Yeah. It's probably difficult to find other ways of doing those things. But that's sort of the way after 5 years I've found my way through this.
I'm so happy to hear about all the new, experiments afoot and creative practices that you're engaging, Jez. And it's true. I think we both feel such empathy and compassion for those who feel even more constrained or the conditions don't make it easy to align, But I do think, I guess just imagining people out there listening, I think even tiny little, like, even if we can't do capital P purpose, a little micro purpose, even something in the day that makes a difference or that expresses something meaningful to us or our joy. Like, I think without that, we really wither as humans. And so that may be more of a challenge for some than others. But I think back to some of the times that I was sort of suffering the most spiritually, emotionally. I think it was when I felt the greatest frustration and the least purposefulness. So I just think it matters a lot, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. Let's move on to our next words, and maybe let's see if we can maybe put these two together, meaning and happiness.
I agree.
Yeah, I'll just let you run with those.
I mean, I think meaning in for a lot of people connects with purpose as well. Like, I think these all kind of fit together. And I guess I'll just say, in short, for me, connection is key. If I feel too isolated, it's not a good place for me. And so I had shared with you some books I'd read, resources, and I think just feeling not so alone added meaning and added creativity. So if others haven't experimented with that, I would really recommend it. Or maybe it's a video like this and staying connected to you and community and others who understand. But I just feel like I could find greater meaning when I realized, maybe like Ruth was saying, listen, everyone has their suffering. And it helped me somehow to sort of expand my world and not get completely myopic. There was a stage at the beginning, I must have tracked symptoms for like 2 years until I was like, I'm so sick of this. There was something about needing to widen the meaning and get a little bit out of my own feeling a bit mired in my own struggles. So getting connected to bigger picture, bigger sense of community.
I think that's really important. Yeah. I think it's very easy to lose. I think the reason why we've got meaning in the list here is because it's very easy to lose, along with your sense of purpose, it's very easy to lose your sense of meaning. Like, well, what the hell is my life about if it's not about what I thought it was? Where do we find the meaning? Where do we find the importance? What makes us feel like we're still living a life that is meaningful? I think, as you say, I think as much as it's very easy to be introspective in long COVID, because the very nature of the condition withdraws us and means that we're perpetually monitoring ourselves, checking in with ourselves, trying to see when we're overdoing it, what this symptom doing, what that symptom's doing. Oh my God, am I doing too much? What's my heart rate doing? And I think, as you say, I think trying to have at least some outward focus as apart from the inward focus, I think, is what helps us reconnect with that meaning, along with finding your purpose as well in the same part of it. And so moving on to happiness, I think it's again, I mean, almost the word comes with a trigger warning with long COVID, because obviously the condition itself doesn't bring happiness. It's you couldn't ever say that. but I think it perhaps helps you look for happiness in different ways. And I think it
Yeah.
helps you reframe and again, like what is it we look for in our lives to provide happiness? And maybe the things that we thought we looked for in our lives before to find happiness no longer could or should be the things that we look for now in our lives to find happiness.
Mhm.
And I think the other thing here is that happiness is just as, or if not even more important than it ever was. Because happiness is a huge part, whatever happiness we can find is a huge part of us regulating our nervous system and actually being in a good place to give ourselves the best chance of recovery. And I think there's a little part of us as well that is almost scared to be happy, perhaps, with like, there's almost a little bit of this thing has happened and I shouldn't be feeling happy about things. Or if I suddenly do feel happy, or even here's the other thing that's a bit insidious is I can't show myself to be happy in front of other people when I'm trying to convince them that I'm suffering. That's a tough one as well, right? But I think ultimately at the end of the day, I think what I want to say is that happiness is important. I think you still have to try and search it out and find it where you can and try and don't lose sight of it and do cherish it when you can find it.
And the last point that I thought I would offer is also that empathy and humility because I think I wish maybe I could have a bit more like equanimity. But the truth is, I can still see I'm somewhat vulnerable. It's easier to be happier when I'm feeling better. And when I
Oh,
have a dip or a
100%.
crash, I am not this resilient Zen monk who just has equal happiness. And probably I should get back to the meditation. It might even things out a little. But I just think probably lots of us can relate. It's easier to be happy when your body feels more comfortable, when you're having a lot of pain or uncomfortable sensations or for you more the crashing stuff, it's not as easy. So just that compassion for it's not linear, it's not, oh, steady improvement. It's such a roller coaster.
And what I would also throw in there as well is I've certainly noticed that my mood is way dodgier on I say my mood is I'm not like beating people up. I'm just saying that I'm aware that my the signature signs of depression are much more present on days where I'm crashy. And
Yeah.
that's not simply because I'm fed up with the fact that I'm having a bad day, although I probably am. There's also, I think, a very direct linear correlation we've seen in studies that link inflammation, especially neurological inflammation, with depression. And so when you have those crashy days, which are almost certainly a consequence of chronic inflammation flaring up, that is naturally physiologically going to have an effect on your mood too. So don't beat yourself up on those days. Just do what you can to get through them in the kindest way you can to yourself and the people around you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so challenges. And in this, I'm just going to sort of package in. People were interested in the challenges that you've faced in terms of reintegrating yourself back into a work environment. Um,
Yeah.
is there anything
I,
you can talk about that?
yeah, I don't have any brilliant tips. What I can say is, I guess in some ways that comes back truthfully that I had the privilege of a few conditions that really made it easier. So for one, just enough recovery. Like that's the top influencing condition. Number two, I'm self-employed. That allows me the privilege and the freedom to have, not always, I have things I must show up for and so on. But I think I have a lot more autonomy and flexibility than someone who does shift work or who has a job that they're on their feet all day. So I really actually have a hunch, Jez, that the biggest advantages that have supported me are those conditions. And as I mentioned earlier, my job is largely sedentary. Now, that doesn't mean I've had times because I get more cardiovascular stuff. I've had times where, again, it's sort of potsy. I need to lie down or I've needed to cancel an appointment. But thankfully, for the most part, my job, like my capacity, my spoons are within the requirements of the job. So that really, that's mostly what I can say on that front. And the other one that came up that I think someone was mentioning was relating to the shared load and the challenges of when I can't keep up my sort of share of the load. And I guess I would just say with that challenge, what has helped me most is first of all, needing to have periodic talks about it, like not just getting caught in the fray and some irritability between myself and my partner, but like periodic heart to hearts, which sometimes have been painful, and just sort of clearing the air, recalibrating moving forward. But also back to what I was saying when we talked about the loneliness or some relationship pieces, I actually think it's been really crucial that I widen the net and have empathetic talks with friends because my partner is the one who is at times having to do more of the load, even if he's empathetic. It's not easy. He has his own frustrations and resentment, not even of me sometimes, but the illness or the lower energy. So I just think I would really recommend to people, and I know some people have said it even has resulted in relationship breakdown. But for those who are in partnerships and persevering, it's been really important that I kind of, in a way, not expect my partner to be a saint who can just everly, be an endless font of empathy, compassion, and picking up the extra load. And so leaning into friendships who can add some of that compassion and empathy because it's not as impactful on them. Crucial, kind of distributing, again, coming back to the village, I think, to relieve the strain and pressure on impacted partnerships.
I think that's incredibly good advice. Incredibly good advice. I did do some research on the impact of long COVID on relationships. There's a video, actually, I'll put the link to it in the description, where I talked about it. And the impact was absolutely cataclysmic in terms of the people who'd had long COVID and what it had done to their relationships. It impacted on just about every single facet of those relationships. And the number of relationships that had broken down as a direct result of the illness was really high.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as far as challenges goes, that is a huge one. With regards to my sort of work scenario, yeah, I can't get back to my old job, as I said. For me, what I have to choose work that I can do in my own time,
Mhm.
when I'm feeling up to it, without having to go anywhere to do it. So from home, and and again, it helps having come from a history of being freelance and self-employed, because I'm used to that. And I'm lucky in the sense that I have been able to do things that have kept me going. So one of the things I don't talk about very often, but I set up a business converting pedal bikes into e-bikes after doing my own because I didn't have any wheels. I couldn't. Well, I had no ability to be mobile around London, so I converted my own bike. And I went, why is no one doing this? And again, that was work that fitted inside a skill set I already had, and I've been taking bikes apart since I was 15. So and I could do it from home. So much like Kevin Costner in Field of Dreams, where he says, build it and they will come. I just built the website. Turns out people came. So again, that's work I can do in my own time when I feel up to it. I don't have to commute. I don't have to do anything else. But we're not all that privileged, and it is a privilege to be able to do that. So yeah, again, but it's a challenge. It's still a challenge. I mean, look, challenges as a word. I mean, there's like 3 videos all just on that. Right? I mean, we could just go round and round and like break down challenges into like 100 different subcategories. But before everyone goes mad, and again, we want this to be a little bit more of a
Mhm.
positive one. Let's move on to wisdom. Um,
Yeah.
do you think that you are a wiser person? Okay, 2 sides to this. Have you encountered any wisdom in this journey that's been useful for you? And do you think you're a wiser person now?
Yes and yes. I hope so. I think so. Again, I would say, pardon me, having the sense of people who can offer guidance, wisdom, related experience is just so crucial. And again, at times those were some of your videos in the early days. I know it was also information, but there's a kind of wisdom in a creative response, in finding our agency, in experimenting. So people within long COVID community, but as I say, others who have traveled through illness experiences or losing ability, the disability community. I mean, there's people who have hard won wisdom, related experience, knowledge. So yeah, I just can't even, I can't overstate that. That's just been so crucial to me. Um, Wisdom also, like I will say, Tara Brock, she's one of my favorites. She She's a Western therapist, American woman, and also influenced by Buddhism and is a Dharma teacher. And when I was having a lot more insomnia and symptoms in the night, all I can say is that was like a godsend to plug into her podcasts. And that may not be the right source for some, but I just want to say again, it's almost like the radio channels in my head. I can go to places of distress or almost rumination. It was like plugging into sources of wisdom and nourishing support. It was crucial. Yeah, but there was something about those middle of the night moments that could be really brutal. And again, it almost is painful. Like I don't want to go back to how bad it was, but when I try to recall, I mean, there were times yeah, it was just scary and it was just so unpleasant. And so wisdom has felt almost like a lifesaver getting through really difficult moments, but also again, just widening my lens. And then as far as my own growth, I guess I think a lot of wisdom is about maturation as a human, and often maturation comes through going through challenges and not doing it, forget perfectionism or sort of trying to do it in some ideal way. But there is something about trying to find grace, trying to be creative, trying to find fortitude, trying to allow this, like we talked about, the empathy or Ruth, like that actually it's not just for our own well-being, our own fulfillment. Are there ways this grows us that it impacts our ability to make a difference, to show up for others, to be with others? So, yeah, absolutely. How about you?
I think I am a wiser person now. Again, I think it's like I said in my last video, that's spectrum of experience that you gain through having this can and should only make you a wiser person, right? You gain wisdom through experiences, and I think you gain more experience through negative. You gain more wisdom through negative experiences or tough experiences than you do through easy ones or good ones. Um, so I suspect all of us are probably a fair bit wiser now than we were before.
And I know some of that is not easy. Like it isn't just like, oh, yay. If anything, because I know some people wrote, I feel changed and not for the better. I mean, that's painful too, that it can have that can feel true. But what I would say is like for me, one way that I hope and think may be a kind of wisdom or maturation, I think I tended to be such a like an enthusiast, an optimist, but maybe that sometimes almost tipped to wanting to bypass some of the difficulties of life. And it's almost like like I think you said, the three colors to the rainbow. I would say probably it's forced me to confront more of the painful stuff where we don't have control. Like I think I preferred to put my focus on we can do anything and kind of that sort of, oh, let's go. And this has been so humbling. And in the truest sense, like to bring us to the ground, it kind of drops you down to go through something like this. But if there is more acceptance and movement, then we're wholer, deeper, wider people for it.
So I just because I love my visual metaphors. You know how I had the colors one and the kaleidoscope and the rest of it. I don't know if you remember your sine wave at school. It does this, right?
Okay.
It's like yeah, it's you say okay like you don't, but the
I'm
sine
not a
wave,
super science person, but I can follow this.
yeah, okay, right. So life before all of this, it's almost like and there's a mid like there's the naught because sine goes from one to minus one, right? There's the naught line here. And it's almost like my life before had just sort of bounced around above that line, right? That's all I'd experienced of life. Now I feel like I've had the whole fucking ride from one to minus one. And there's a lot down there between naught and minus one. And once you've lived it, I think it makes you a better person, certainly in terms of your ability to help others who are maybe also going through their between naught and minus one period.
Yeah.
Um, so let's talk about fate. Um, and potentially this word initiation as well. Do you believe? Well, A, do you believe in fate, and B, to what degree do you see it as possibly long COVID having had being part of your fate on this planet in this life?
I don't know. I sit more with questions than conclusions on this one. So I honestly don't have a ton to say. But it seems so, like, if anything, it seems like I should have been fated not to get COVID. I was aware of the pandemic. I was following the literature. The second The Atlantic published cancel everything, I pulled my kids out of school. But because of the timing of that publication, Jez, I went to the fateful conference. I did get the virus. It's just so strange. I don't know how to explain it. It's just like it seems like the odds should have been I wouldn't have gotten it, and yet I did. So was it fated? I don't know. But I will say, with regard to the words initiation, the whole idea of sort of like you talked about it in the film industry, like it's a catalytic event that changes everything, or in myth, it tends to be an unwanted invitation or event or experience, and it changes the whole course of the protagonist's
So,
life.
so it's traditionally in film, what's the worst thing that could possibly happen? That's the question you need to ask yourself to your character. You take your character, you think, what's specifically the very worst thing that could possibly happen to them? The most ironic, awful thing. You've just described it perfectly. You were the person who were really, on top of all of it, but yet, there you go.
Yes. Well, when you put it that way, it's almost like the cruel twist of fate. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it feels somewhat like that. But in the sense of initiation, for sure. And I think we spoke to that in the first video. I mean, it has, with regards to that word transformation, it has transformed so much. We uprooted our homes, we've moved, it turned my life inside out, backwards, and sideways. So I absolutely would credit it as an initiatory event that, yeah, changed everything. And again, I know some people are still holding on to the hope of full recovery, and I have no interest to take anyone's hopes away, but I think I am more in the acceptance and the anticipation that I will live with some level of a fluctuating, changed body. And in that sense, there's no going back. It's a really definitive before and after. It has profoundly changed my life. That is what I anticipate. Maybe you don't even want me to accept that, but that's what I, and even with SARS, it was here in Canada. Most people never go back to 100%. So I guess I'm a little more anticipating, can I kind of fluctuate best I can? So yeah, it changed my life permanently. That's what I anticipate.
Yeah, and I think it's gonna I think it change even if we fully recover, I think it changes our lives forever because it changes the person you are.
Yeah.
On the subject of fate, for me, I'm not that fatalistic. I do believe in choice over fate, agency, and the rest of it. But at the same time, there has been a little, I grew up with a mother who was into crystal medicine and acupuncture and new age and all of that stuff. So I was very much a scientist. I went to Oxford, I read engineering, and I went, look at your circular belief system, what a load of nonsense. But there are little bits of her woo-woo-ness that feel okay with me. And one of those bits of woo-woo-ness that feels okay with me is the idea of what was I here on the planet to do? And I was searching for that before this.
Mhm.
I say this being long COVID, I was searching to try and have a career where I could do something that made a difference, you know, that had some legacy, that changed the way people think, meant that I had achieved something that wasn't just screwing the tops on toothpaste tubes, or whatever my job might have otherwise been. I think that's a quote from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, actually. I always found that absurd as a kid. It was that book I used to read at night when I read it like 18 times. I'm like, I think Charlie's dad screwed the tops on toothpaste tubes. And it just stuck me as like, this is the banality of what the world has waiting for us when we grow up. But so my point was, how was I going to make that difference in the world? What was I going to do that was meaningful beyond myself? And it might well be that the work I've done around long COVID has made more difference than anything else I could ever have done. And maybe that was my fate. Maybe my fate was this. And maybe, in a let's say I've got, maybe I power up my DeLorean, fit the flux capacitor, and go back to 2020 and make sure I avoid catching COVID. Would I get to this point in time 5 years later and actually think, oh fuck, maybe I'm still on the wrong path. Maybe this was the right path for me. That was like you said, that catalyst, that inciting incident was actually the thing I'd just been waiting to happen in my life, back catching COVID, developing long COVID, this was the fundamental change event that needed to happen to put me on the path that the rest of my life was going to be. And maybe that was fate. And even if it wasn't, I'm happier if I believe it. So that's the other thing with this, right?
I was going to say, in terms of that authoring our stories or the
Yeah.
meaning we create, I think it's a more creative, it's like the hero's story instead of the tragedy, you know? And yeah, Jez, I think I can't know, but it's still incredible to think of like that it would happen to you with your unique, your film background, your interest in viruses, the dengue fever thing. And even that we live at a time that the technology exists. I mean, it is kind of incredible to think the difference that you made. It's just, there's so many interesting conditions that had to be present for the impact that you've had. And I know that it still makes a difference. Reading the comments yesterday, it's huge. And I was thinking after we did our first conversation, you know, even medical practitioners and researchers who are trying to move forward progress on this and other post-viral illnesses, it's not easy actually in the scientific field to make it's like slow and steady work. It's sort of cool that you can be an educator. You can move sort of with agility and try to be someone who's gathering and presenting and sharing. It's a really important role. And I actually think a whole medical system or the scientific field just can't move often quite at that speed. Anyway, just another thank you. And I'm so grateful that you stepped up into to that response. It is huge.
Thank you. I think, I mean, I agree. I think I've sort of stepped into where there was a void. And even now, there's a bit of a void in this space between all the different experts and specialists who all are digging into one little part of this puzzle. But it feels like there needs to be something in the middle of that puzzle, pulling all of these bits together and saying, how does this all fit together? And like, who's actually standing there in the middle and I mean, I'm not the person standing in the middle and unifying everybody, but at least I can sort of stand in the middle and try and report what's happening in all these different parts of the puzzle and try and give everybody an overview as far as I can.
And you're with the lived experience you have, you're staying attuned to the community and trying to keep it practical, grounded, what can make an actual difference for these real humans going through it. Some people may be a researcher, but they're not necessarily living with it. I just think it's a unique position. The other thing I will say, though, protectively, even if I might not go back and change it either, like my life has changed radically, and would I be willing to forego all that has transpired? It's a really tough question. But I will say, with the potential, avian flu, or even virologists who say at some point more pandemics are to follow, I'm like, I don't fucking need to go through that same initiation again. I wouldn't wish it on you. I don't wish it on long haulers who had to do first wave. Like, once is plenty, Jez. I would still say, come
Yeah, no, for
on.
sure, for sure. Once is enough. Well, that's to say, right? Make your mistakes, but make them once, right? You don't need to go through bad stuff twice.
Oh,
Right. So I appreciate I'm running out of brain puff at this
you.
point. I'm sure our audience are too. We have one word left, which is gifts. And again, trigger warning on this because some people are like, there are no gifts upon COVID.
Yeah.
But I think if you choose to reframe the way that you look at it in your life, you can find some, but it might take you 5 years. If you'd asked me in the
Yes.
first year, what are the gifts? I'd have been like, what? So maybe it takes time to find that little thingy under the rainbow. What would you say for you on this?
I just want to underscore that. I think you're absolutely right. And it almost feels insulting when you're in some of those earlier stages of suffering or grief or desperate hope that, you know, that it's going to change. So yeah, I just that real caveat and sensitivity. But from the vantage point I'm at now, I would say the gifts are the things we've highlighted, the empathy, the wisdom, a deeper, this almost sounds a bit morbid, perhaps, but like I am more in touch with the fragility, my mortality. And there are ways that that can be heavy, but the gifts are, it's like you don't just float through life complacent. There's something about seeing with deeper, clearer eyes, like we said, like what's really important and trying to center and anchor our choices and how we live from that. So I think we've covered it, but yes, there are gifts, and and I think it does matter to try to stay connected to that frame.
As you were talking there, it gave me a visual image. And again, I think probably people who listen to this last couple of hours will get a sense for where my brain works in terms of references. But this one is The Matrix. So I'm assuming most people here have seen The Matrix, but imagine that you're Neo in The Matrix and you've got brain fog. So you can't actually see the world around you that looks like it's supposed to. But after a certain amount of time, you get to see the code, right? You know how he basically starts seeing all the green code that is the fabric of the Matrix itself. That is almost the gift here, which is you start to get to see what really matters behind all the bullshit of what we're told is important in life. You know, what we're told is important in life is all of the immediate stuff around us, but see through that, the code behind it is this opportunity to see what really matters, to be able to live a life with no regrets, to be able to have this brought into sharp focus now so you still have some time to do something about
Yeah.
it, because you don't want to be having these realizations too late. Um, so that's
Mhm.
probably what I would say in terms of gifts. It's I'm thankful now for the. So here's the other screenwriting thing. What's the worst thing that could possibly happen to your protagonist? That's your inciting incident, your catalyst moment. But then the second part of that is, and how could that turn out to be the best thing? Because
Aha.
that's generally what happens. And then by the end of the story, the thing that they thought they were after at the start, they realize they don't want after all. And there's this hidden thing that was sitting underneath all the time. And they realize that's what's actually going to make them tick. They find their inner meaning. It's the difference between the A and the B story. I could go on about this for a whole other hour. But basically, that's it's if I want to end on something, it's yeah, I think without doubt, long COVID will be pretty much the worst thing that could have happened to us at a point in our lives. Is there a world in which maybe not turn out to be the best thing, but how can we look at how it can help us see the world around us in a way that makes the rest of our lives more meaningful and more nourishing for us?
Mhm. Yes.
Yes. Okay, well, let's
And,
go on.
and just the last thing I would say is it's like just for people who may be at a different point, again, just that reminder, it's not linear, the ups and the downs. And if one is in a real down point, like almost like struggling to see the gifts, just that reminder too of like, we deserve support. Sometimes that might mean a therapist, a different kind of health practitioner, a friend who gets it. Like just that reminder, don't stay alone in the real depths. And hopefully you're still in the middle of the plot and there is more potential, more growth, and support is often key to get some movement if we feel stuck.
And what
I,
I would also say here is that I think this conversation comes with a perspective of 5 years. I'm not sure that would have been ending this conversation in this way 1, 2, or 3 years in. I think there is definitely so for people who are listening to this and going, fucking, wind your neck in. I think what I just want to say is time is a huge part of this, and the level of recovery. We've had different levels of recovery between us, but that is a part of it too. And I also just want to send out a lot of compassion to everybody who's listening to this, who's if you've been able to handle an hour of this, who are going through tough periods, with the knowledge that yeah, we know what it's like, and we still get them ourselves too. Well, I do anyway. Yeah,
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
yeah.
Mm.
Okay. Lovely to talk to you, Nicola. If there's great demand, and perhaps actually what I'll just shout out now, if there are words that people feel like we haven't covered, are there another? I mean, look, it's taken us an hour to get through 8. So maybe let's see if there are 5 words, slightly more bite-sized. There are 5 words that people feel that ought to be addressed or there's room to address them, then throw them into the comments and maybe we'll come back for part 3.
Thanks, Jess.
Yes, thank you. See you soon.